Okay. Hello, everybody. This is for the Divas That Care Network, Dr. Irina Kay, your primary relationship mentor. Before I introduce you to a remarkable woman, Holly Holmberg, I would like to let you know to please stay to the end for a special announcement. But now, let's dive in. I have with me the amazing Holly Holmberg. She is one of Canada's leading animal and intuitive professional essential oil therapists. She's also an international keynote speaker for aromatherapy and her Power Within mentorship program. She is a Canadian Navy veteran, former Olympic level biathlete, and contributing author to the #1 international bestseller, Sacred Hearts Rising. If that weren't enough, she is the life worker and clinical aromatherapist behind Quantum Soul Mechanic, vibrational soul thread reconnection, and Quantum Soul aromatherapy with therapeutic essential oils and blends. Plus, she leads the Enchanted Forest Adventure Retreats, reconnecting you to Mother Earth and her loving earthly vibe. Holly has an in the trenches mentoring style that teaches others how to use their life experience to find their power within and focus on where they're going to, not what they're going through. I love that, Holly. I really love that last sentence. Focus on where you're going to, not where you're going through. Where did you come up with this?
Actually, a dear friend of mine in Australia, she had told me that one time when I was having a rough spot. And I have a picture of it. I posted it, and it's a picture of when we were in Australia. It's overlooking the beautiful countryside, and I've got that saying over top of it. And any day that I'm feeling kind of glum or got my head up my butt, I see that, and it's like, that's right. And there's another lady in my life, a mentor, who says to me, let's stand on your story instead of in your story. So having powerful mentors like that, who are friends and soul sisters, are really, part of the key to keep me moving forward, for sure.
That's beautiful. Were you always intuitive?
Yes. Since I was a little girl, on the family farm here in central Alberta, I always seen things that not everybody else seen. It wasn't always pretty, but sometimes it was pretty entertaining in its own right.
And were you one of the lucky ones that were not held back by sometimes parents and, even the society at large does not want to have children see things that others don't see and kind of repress that? Were you able to live that?
Not openly. I mean, my parents knew that I seen things, and I come from a family who does see things. But of course, in society, certainly wasn't encouraged in the early 70s and through the 80s and such. But I grew up on a family farm. It was a large farm, and I spent a lot of time just with my horses and out roaming, the prairies on horseback. So I was really able to spend a lot of time, with myself and getting in touch with all of that, and and with nature and such. So I didn't talk about it much because I grew up knowing it's not something you talk about. And then it kind of reemerged for me more to the forefront as I started to have children and my children were seeing things. And luckily I knew people who, were in the same boat that I was. And I was able then to teach my children that, these are not horrible, daytime nightmares and things like that you're seeing. And it really helped them grow their own tools and devices and understand it so that they weren't as, terrified or scared or however you want to put it, like I was as a child. I didn't want them to grow up fearing it and having the horrendous nightmares that I did. And so, I kind of left it for a while, but it came back to me. But now I've fully embraced it. And I have a partner who loves the fact that I have these gifts and the things that I do with it.
That is wonderful. That's basically leading into my next question that I had. How did that impact relationships in your life? Because we're talking about relationships here in this platform, and how did these intuitive gifts impact relationships that at sometimes must have been not that easy, right?
Yes, most of the time growing up, I mean, hormones kind of took over and the intuitive side kind of kicked to the back when it came to the teenage years and puberty, as like with most of us. But when I finally did marry, I mean, the gentleman that I married and had my children with, there was red flags and things came up, but we think we're in love or we are in love, and we say, well, that's okay, it won't last forever, it'll change, those kinds of things that we tell ourselves. And then when my children's father found out, and we truly discussed what I did and stuff like that, he was scared in his own way. He was a very gifted individual himself, but he did not like the fact that I did what I did, and he would tease me, but in a way, the words were hurtful. In you're kind of a hoodoo hippie witch doctor, and it wasn't meant in fun. It was meant in a more malicious and painful way. But he knew no different from his upbringing, so I can't fault him on that. But then after our marriage dissolved and I moved on, and when I met Tracy, my current common law husband, Tracy really embraced these gifts. He had known other people who had gifts and had close friends who had these kinds of gifts. And he had lost his father when he was young. He was 14. So his thing was always, he would love to have been able to know if his late father was able to see his children, was able to see how he had, growing up in life and all that he had achieved in his accomplishments. So it was just comforting for him. He would always say to me, well, do you see dad? Do you talk to dad? And I'm like, well, your dad teases me now and then, or something will go on. And I don't always see his father, but I get a definite feeling in knowing that his father is with us, and that his father is very proud of who his son has become and what his life has looked like. So for Tracy, it has been a great comfort. And then for me to be able to use these gifts to help others grow into their best potential, that's his passion. He loves to help people as well. So having a partner that can do that with him is really up his alley.
That is fantastic. This is so beautiful, because I'm seeing that you're writing what you're passionate about in reference to relationships is living a real life with yourself and your partner. What do you mean by real life? And I'm guessing opposing of a fake one.
Well, I really come to terms with a real life at the end of my 20-year marriage. My late ex-husband was an undiagnosed bipolar. We spent 20 years in our relationship. He suffered greatly with his mental health, and in the end, it caused the problems within our marriage. And he ended up being narcissistic and that, and it caused him great pains. But for me, going into relationships from adolescence and puberty as a young woman, I mean, we always grow up with the Disney happy ending movies, White House picket fence kind of thing. And, the societal mindsets we had and everything that we're fed over the years. But in the last few years of my marriage, as it was breaking down, I sat there and I had this deep, raw feeling that there had to be something more. There had to be someone out there who could accept me, warts and all, and still be okay with it and in everything else. So that really sparked my journey, not just before my marriage had ended, but even after our divorce and such, to really do a road of self-discovery, what relationships were, what I was looking for, and in that, I really had to get raw with myself and really analyze what I really wanted in life and who I was. And long story short, I found out that I wrote down a list of qualities in what I wanted for a partner. And then I realized that if I wanted a partner with these amazing qualities, that I really had to step up to the plate and become that same kind of person. So the like attracts like. And when I reflected back on the marriage that I had. And when I met my children's father, I loved him dearly when we met. And, we had met initially when I was a teenager and then married when I was in my young 20s. And I really attracted him and he attracted me as well. But where we were at that point in time as individuals in our character and personalities and such, we were perfect for each other. But as we grew, we changed and such, and our values and ideals changed. But then, so we did attract each other, but it wasn't a healthy space where we were. We were still both growing and learning. And then now when I've attracted Tracy and we're working together, we're more mature in our values and thought processes and what we want. So it was really a labor of love. Long story short, I really had to learn who I was and what I wanted in order to have the kind of partner I wanted.
So if we take this, as you say, long story short, you have to learn to love yourself, I guess, and see
it
what
is.
you want in someone else in yourself.
It is. And I mean, my daughter teases me and kind of tosses it back in my lap because she deals with mental health just like her father did. And she says to me, she says, Mom, as a mental health person who suffers from anxiety and depression, she says, I always hear people say, well, you have to love yourself first. And she says, excuse my French, but what kind of bullshit is that? And how do you do that? She says, I hear this all the time. So how do you do that? And it boils down to, yes, you have to love yourself, but you really need to dig deep within yourself and find your qualities, your good points, your bad points, and really just come to terms with it and say, yes, I have done some things I'm really not proud of. Yes, I may have acted in manners I'm not happy with. I may have qualities that definitely need improvement, and not to be angry and frustrated and horrified at yourself, but to just realize that, you are a human being, you're an energy soul on a human journey, and it is all a part of being a human, and it is all a part of our journey to learn. And the biggest thing is, like I say within my lecture for Power Within, is if we can take all these things that we see in ourselves, ugly and beautiful and all of that, and just understand that it is us and be okay with that, and move forward and love ourselves for all of those things, then we are able to be vulnerable enough and allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to see someone else without judgment and love all those idiosyncrasies and things like that, and character faults, the good, bad, and the ugly as well, and not judge them and not expect things from them. So we really need to see all that in ourselves and be okay with it before we can really move forward and have a partner that we can value in that same respect.
Super. So how do you think others could go about this? What could they go? I mean, you said it helped you grow as an individual and reminded you to be real and honest with a partner after the experiences you had, and you know that people grow and change during their life. Is it like constant work on it, or what has to happen? What should people do?
I think the initial work is your hardest, the initial getting to know yourself and being okay with it, letting your ego go and saying, I'm a human being. And then once you've mastered that, and I mean, for me, it was a progress of probably about 3-4 years to really look at every facet of myself and all the ugliness within myself, and the things that I didn't like, the things I did like. So the things I did not like, I looked at and said, okay, I'm not happy with this behavior or habit or whatever the case may have been, or view or idea or judgment or belief system that I was brought up with. And I had to sit down and say, okay, how can this change so that it improves me, but I'm not being harmful to everybody around me? Because that's a big space where I come from, that heart-centered, that, it's okay for me to do what I do and believe what I believe, but I don't want to purposely go out and be malicious and hurt the people around me. so that's really tying into your belief system. So really looking at your belief systems and saying, is this a core value or a core belief that I personally have as a being, or is it something that's been implemented to me through my parents, through my peers, through society, through the community I live in? So where is this belief system coming from? Where are these values coming from? Are they really mine? And then if there's a value or belief that you really don't like, and you look at it and say, well, then research and find what other values and ideas are out there. How do other people look at this? How do other cultures, societies, etc.? Maybe you don't believe in monogamy. And then, you say, well, I would like to have, more partners in my life or more open relationship. Well, if you're from a, tight-knit religious family that is monogamous for centuries, and that is the belief system, then you're really stepping out of the box with a multi-partner belief system, and your family's going to shun you and things like that. So working through those things, and then of course stepping into something where everybody involved in your relationship or your love is knowing and understanding and coming from the same aspect of that. So, it's really doing the dirty work. And then as you progress from that in time, and you're constantly kind of doing a checkup on yourself to say, am I following my belief patterns? Am I following my belief systems? Am I coming from my heart center? And sometimes you might find that some days, you're being a turd. And it's okay. It's just then you get back on the wagon and you carry on again. And I mean, a perfect example is my husband and I living out here. We live off grid in the Canadian wilderness in Alberta. And some days I find myself being sharp with him, or I'm being, kind of rude, or, we're just typical female, not niceness. And I'll look at him and I'll say, I've been a real turd lately, and I truly apologize. I haven't been, wholehearted. I haven't been coming from a space of love. I've been selfish. I've been these things. And, that's where he'll step up to the plate and say, you're really not as bad as what you thought you were. Yes, this was kind of caustic or kind of nasty, but, I love you and I realize that you're working through things as well. And vice versa. He'll come back to me and he'll say, I've been kind of sharp. I've been stressed out about these certain things that are going on in my life, and I'm worried about this or I'm worried about that. But that doesn't mean it's the way I need to talk to you, because I'm working through it and feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah, so that sounds like you're very much feeling the emphasis in this relationship, or any relationship, should be on a deep communication where you allow yourself to be true to yourself and still see someone else being true to themselves, and allowing them to open up and say things that may be painful to hear, but to work together to solve these issues.
Exactly. Being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable to you. And I often say it is trusting yourself. I've met so many people who are not willing to even trust themselves, which I understand, but stepping into that vulnerability and being that raw with yourself and loving yourself for it. And I mean, it's not an easy place to come from. I understand that completely. But when you do step into that, you give yourself such power, and you really eliminate the fears that come with everything else of, are they going to like me? Is he going to love me? All those idiosyncrasies that run through our brain and judgmental things. If you really step into that vulnerability and put that judgment aside, and learn to work and grow from an aspect of that, then yes, when you come to a partner, you can honestly lay things on the table and say, these are my no-go zones. This is the things that I like. This is the way I expect to be, not expect, but this is the way I want to be treated. And I will treat you in the same manner, that I would like to be treated. So really that vulnerability, that truthfulness to yourself, and with that vulnerability, we have to understand that, yes, we can get hurt, but when we get hurt, we heal and we learn, and we can never truly, truly love and experience life and all of the beautiful things that come with it and the ugly things that come with it if we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And like I keep reiterating, that starts within our own being.
Right. Now you have a special kind of, I don't know if you want to call it issue, a challenge maybe in your relationship, that you are also ex-military or Navy. And
Yes.
what happens to people if they're, I know from people that are offshore in the oil and gas industry and stuff, they don't see each other for a long time. So it's almost like a long distance relationship in parts. What could you tell them what they should be doing?
A classic example is when I got out of the forces, and I had introduced my high school girlfriend to my best friend from the military who I went through basic training with. So in short, she was like the sister I never had, and he was like a big brother. And when they met, I said to them, I don't expect anything, but, you two are to be friends because you are both my friends, and I just want my friends together. Well, that grew for them. So finally, one day, my girlfriend called me and she says, Holly, he has asked me to move to Victoria with him and live with him. And they were not married, they were engaged at this time, and both come from very strong Catholic backgrounds. And I said to her, I said, okay, if you're going to step into this relationship, I said, you must understand that he is Navy and he will be gone a large part of your marriage. And I said, you will have to learn to have a life without him. And then when he comes home, bring him back into your life and be okay with that. And she looked at me and she says, what do you mean? And I says, well, he can be gone for 6 months at a time, and you really have to figure it out, how to balance this out. So the first time that he left, which was 3 days after their wedding, and he was gone for 6 months, wow. She calls me and she says, she was crying and she was a nutcase. And she says, how am I going to do this? And I said to her, I said, look, you need to pull up your big girl panties and have a life while he's away at sea. So that means you have to build your friends. You have to have your community that you do. You have to, physically, emotionally, mentally take care of yourself, be it gym, yoga, those sorts of things. You have to have your career, because they chose not to have children for their own personal reasons. I said, so, if you're going to have your show dogs as your children, I says, you need to be invested in that. And you need to share what you're doing in your life with him through letters, through, occasionally they would get phone calls, via satellite. When they got into port, they would have emails and things like that. So you will have to connect in that respect. And then when he does come home finally at the end of his stint, you have to be able to allow him into your home and into your life again and have your life with him. I said, so you're going to be kind of in an off and on honeymoon state, but at the end of it, the honeymoon, is going to look a little different than a traditional honeymoon. So you really need to have a world of your own and a life of your own. And then he has his, and then together you blend these two worlds together where they overlap. So yeah, you have your, ways that you might like to make the bed, or, certain things like that, set the table, whatever, those little idiosyncrasies. And he has his. But through open communication and working together, that when you meld those lives together, because it's not just about women, it's about the men too. They have to be aware of this and allow this to work. Then it can go smoothly. So, having the communication, being heartfelt, not just constant, oh, this broke down, that broke down, the kids are driving me crazy, blah, 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 blah. It's talking about how you are doing, how your life is going, where you want both of your lives to go and such. And now my dear friend, he is quite in a senior position in the military, and she's, still home working at the job that she has, but he's predominantly home-based. And now I get the phone calls from her. I wish he would just be able to go to sea so that I can have my quiet time again by myself, right? And I have a lot of oil women say that to me too. I mean, my husband is currently on a 2-out 14 and 7, so he's gone 14 days and home 7 days. So, you know, I'm running the farm for 7 days, and then when he comes home, he kind of takes over and helps with the chores and builds things. But really, it's communication. When my husband and I talk, you know, I'm talking about day-to-day things that are going on, and then I'm also talking about, you know, how I'm feeling, and not just all the fuzzy how I'm feeling, but, you know, how I'm missing him, how I'm missing being in his arms, feeling his body heat, you know, the smell of his body, you know, those sorts of things that I'm communicating with him, that these are the things that I'm missing about him. I'm not just missing the fact that, you know, he has a penis and we haven't had sex forever. I'm not just missing the fact that, you know, he hauls the water for me or does the chores or builds things. I'm not just missing the fact of, you know, that, you know, he brings an income into our household that is currently larger than mine. You know, I miss those things, but those are the immaterial things. I'm getting down on a soul level and telling him how I'm feeling and what I'm missing from him as an actual partner, which really helps feed him emotionally, mentally, and as a male, to know that, you know, he is wanted, and not just because he's, you know, a man kind of thing. Fantastic. That he's wanted on a soul level, that he's wanted on a connected level.
This goes back to what you said, being heart-centered, and we don't have much time left, but I just wanted to ask you, when you are doing the retreats or helping people, being that heart-centered mentor, you using, I'm guessing you said, aromatherapy, how
yes.
could people get in touch with you or book sessions with you or get the aromatherapy, whatever you can give them? How do they do that?
They can get a hold of me through my website, which is www.quantumsoulmechanic.com. My email address is on there, as well as my contact phone numbers. They can also get a hold of me via Facebook. It's just under my own personal name, Holly Holmberg. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Quantum Soul Mechanic. It is also my personal account on Instagram, but my work involves so much of my personal life and connectedness that it's very difficult for me to separate and say that I have a company and myself, because it's a mixture of kind of my branding, and my business is myself on top of, you know, the workbooks and programs that I'm instituting within the business and such as well.
Fantastic. So I just want to repeat this. This is www.quantumsoulmechanic.com. And
correct.
The magnificent woman we have just talked to is Holly Holmberg, Holmberg. And you can reach her with the email, or just the easiest way I'm thinking is going onto your website and go on from there. And I am so grateful to you to being here with me today and sharing your beautiful insight and wisdom with everybody. And I look very much forward to connecting with you again. So thank you so much for being here at the Divas That Care Network. And I hope you're continuing your wonderful, happy relationship.
Thank you, Irene. I appreciate that.
Okay, everybody, now to that special announcement. The Divas That Care Network truly cares about all of you, and I would like to get your stories heard as well. How do you cope with relationship issues, and how could you inspire women or other couples? Let me hear your story. Can you contribute to, for example, how to best deal with illness or being a caregiver for a partner, or substance abuse and how it affects a relationship? To apply to be interviewed, just send me an email at irena@divas.care.com. That's IRENA@divas.care.com. I look forward to connecting with you. And we thank Holly Holmberg very much. And until next time, I am Dr. Irena Kay, your relationship mentor on the Divas That Care Network. Ciao.